Welcome to Potty Break. Today we are going to give you 7 interventions to use when you find that your kids are triggered by old trauma.
Our kids can so easily be triggered back into reliving old trauma by just some really common things that happen every day. And some of the things that cause our kids to kind of go back and relive that stuff are anything that happens with the senses, so sights, sounds, and smells. Also, any perceived separation from a caregiver. Other common trauma triggers are changes of seasons and also dates around significant events. It's important to remember this does not have to be around remembered events. I can be triggered by traumas that happened when I was an infant or in utero because the entire brain is an organ dedicated to memory. And so these memories are stored in parts of the brain that I can't access.
Different kids are going to respond to trauma triggers differently. Some of them are going to be more obvious and some of them more subtle. When we talk about trauma, our brain is actually functioning in the moment as if we were in the old trauma back then. van der Kolk is a great author who's written a lot about trauma. He talks about how when we're remembering trauma, our mind is actually firing as if it was back in the old trauma at the current moment. So keep that in mind as we're looking for reactions. What we're looking for in these kids is something unusual. So you might have the kid who's going to be more resistant. They're hyper aroused, and so they're going to start out resistant. You might notice a little bit more defiance. There might be a little more aggression than normal if they just kind of freak out. The other type of kid is the dissociative kid. So this is the kid that's going to be more avoidant. They might seem like they're doing well. They might be over-compliant, and you think they're doing great, but they're really not. These kids might even go into fainting or a lot of physical issues. They might complain of a tummy ache or a headache or something like that. These kids might daydream. You might see them. It almost looks like they're having a seizure or they're just staring off into space for a while. Yeah, they look like a deer caught in headlights. Or another clue might be that they're more clingy than normal.
Treating a kid that's had complex trauma in his life takes years and years, and I'd really encourage you to get professional help to do that. But the focus of this potty break is to talk about 7 brief interventions that actually work with a lot of kids to help to calm them down in the moment.
The first one that we're going to talk about is validation. These kids need a lot of validation of their emotions, and a lot of times they might not even recognize what emotion it is, so you might have to tell them what emotion they seem to be feeling. So when we validate, we're going to tell them, it seems like you're really sad right now, because we want to connect that emotion with what they're feeling, because they might not know that. And then we're going to say, you know what, it's okay for you to feel that way. I would imagine that if I'd gone through what you went through, I would feel the same way.
Secondly, we want to communicate to them that we are here to protect them. And that can be communication with words. I'm not going to let anything happen to you today. We can communicate the protection through our stature and our presence. We stand up and we let them know our size. Kids need to know there's somebody bigger than them there to take care of them.
The third one is to connect through rocking and bouncing and playing. We're going to connect through movement. So as we engage in rhythmic movement or a project together, maybe even putting a puzzle together, that child is able to borrow our calm.
The fourth intervention you can use is touch. Touch actually is way more powerful than even the most powerful medications. So skin-to-skin contact, hugs, having them sit on your lap, rocking them, caressing them, rubbing their back, giving them a scalp massage, those kinds of things are very calming for these kids and can help to bring them back into the present moment. The more contact they have with today and right now, the more we can get them out of those old memories and realize that this day I'm in a place that's safe.
Number 5 is act. Get the body moving. So this is play kickball. Let them punch a punching bag. Let them get that energy out.
Our 6th intervention that works great for these kids is to stay calm yourself. If I was being protected by a bodyguard and I was into a situation and they started to freak out, I might start to freak out. And if you're not calm, just fake it. Staying calm is really hard in these situations because when a kid gets defiant or aggressive, it comes across as a threat. You need to recognize this is an old traumatic memory that they're experiencing. And this is not because they're a bad kid. And so then I can stay calm and I can respond to them in a loving, calm manner. And our last intervention we're going to talk about is to resist the urge to swing from the extremes of punishment or permissiveness. Some parents will want to just say, well, they were experiencing a little trauma, and so I'm just going to let that slide that they broke that thing or that they punched their brother in the face. And I don't think that's very helpful because firm boundaries are one of the more calming things a kid can have. But also I don't want to swing and every time well, you growled at me the wrong way. Stay in your room for the next 2 weeks. That's also not very effective. We want to have that understanding, compassionate response that allows a kid to have the chance to make restitution for what they did. And so an example of this would be if a kid is triggered and they start experiencing that old trauma and they think they're under threat because you asked them to do the dishes, and that's a trauma trigger for them because it's feeling like you don't like them because you're causing them pain. And so they take the glass that they have in their hand and they throw it across the room and they break it. So we'll respond compassionately and you say, oh, that must have been so hard for you. Not quite with that amount of sarcasm.
Yeah, sarcasm doesn't work very well.
No, I'm sorry. I tend to fall into sarcasm quite a bit.
Too.
So you say, oh man, I can tell you're really struggling right now because it was really hard for you. And then later when they're calm, you can come in and say, man, you must feel really bad about having broken that glass because I know that's not who you are really deep down inside. So how are you going to be paying for that glass? Can you do some extra chores? Or are you going to pay cash? And then the kid feels great about themselves because they give a chance to do restitution.
I think the biggest mistake that most parents make is that they do discipline right in the middle of that child reenacting old trauma. And so we do have to wait until they calm down a lot of times to do an effective discipline.
Hey, parents of adoptive and foster kids probably need to become experts in trauma. So I've included a lot of stuff in the show notes, and I encourage you to head over to our website at foreverhomes.org and check that out. Also, it'd be helpful if you would subscribe to this channel so that we can get the word out to you about new trainings coming up. We have one more episode on this segment of dealing with the holidays here on Potty Break, so I encourage you to check that out tomorrow. Until then, don't forget to flush.
And don't forget to wash your hands.